The morning sun casts long shadows across a snow-covered street in Millersburg, Pennsylvania, revealing an impossible sight that would leave an entire town speechless. Row after row of motorcycles stretch as far as the eye can see, their chrome gleaming in the dawn light, lined up perfectly outside a modest two-story house with peeling blue shutters. But what happened next shocked everyone who witnessed it. And the story behind this extraordinary scene begins just 24 hours earlier. Edna Williams adjusts her reading glasses and peers out her kitchen window at the gray December sky, watching the first snowflakes drift lazily past the frost-etched glass. At 73, she's lived in this house for 47 years, ever since Harold carried her over the threshold as his bride. Now, 5 years after his funeral, the silence sometimes feels heavier than the Pennsylvania winters. "Looks like we're in for a big one," she murmurs to herself, a habit she's developed since living alone. The weatherman on her old radio had mentioned snow, but these thick, heavy flakes suggest something more serious approaching. Edna moves through her daily routine with practiced efficiency, tidying the living room that no one visits and preparing a simple lunch that she'll eat. While watching her afternoon programs, the house feels enormous around her, filled with memories, but empty of voices. She pauses at Harold's favorite armchair, running her weathered fingers along its worn fabric. The radio crackles to life with an emergency broadcast that makes her freeze mid-step. This is WPEN with an urgent weather alert. A severe winter storm is rapidly approaching central Pennsylvania. The National Weather Service has issued a blizzard warning for Cumberland and Dauphin counties. Winds are expected to reach 40 miles per hour with up to 18 inches of snow. All non-essential travel is strongly discouraged. Highway 15 and Interstate 81 may close within the hour. Little did Edna know that this decision would change everything. But something deep in her bones tells her to prepare. She hurries to her pantry, gathering supplies with the methodical precision of someone who's weathered many storms. Flashlights, batteries, canned soup, crackers, bottled water. Harold always taught her to be ready for anything. Outside, the snow intensifies dramatically, transforming from gentle flakes into a swirling wall of white. The wind begins to howl, rattling her windows and making the old house groan. Edna wraps her cardigan tighter around her shoulders and checks the thermostat. Grateful that her furnace is still running strong, she settles into her rocking chair by the front window, watching the storm consume her quiet neighborhood. The streetlights flicker on early as darkness seems to fall hours ahead of schedule. One by one, she watches her neighbors' windows glow with warm light. Families gathering together while she sits alone, with only the radio for company. But the real shock was still coming. As the storm reaches its fury, Edna notices something strange through the whipping snow. A distant rumble grows louder, cutting through the wind's roar. It's not thunder, and it's certainly not a snowplow. The sound is rhythmic, mechanical, and getting closer by the second. She leans forward in her chair, pressing her face against the cold glass. The noise becomes unmistakable now, a deep thrumming that reverberates through her chest. Motorcycles. Multiple motorcycles. But who would be riding in weather like this? The rumbling grows to a thunderous crescendo, and suddenly, through the wall of snow, she sees the first headlight cutting through the white curtain. Then another, and another. The roar of engines fills the air as dark shapes emerge from the storm like phantoms on wheels. Edna's heart pounds as she counts them. 5, 6, 7 motorcycles becoming visible through the blizzard, their riders hunched against the driving snow. But this decision would change everything for both her and these unexpected visitors. Fighting their way through the worst storm she's seen in years, the lead motorcycle slows, its rider gesturing to the others behind him. They're clearly in distress, searching for shelter as the storm threatens to overwhelm them completely. Edna watches, transfixed, as more bikes appear through the swirling snow. 10, 11, 12 riders, all struggling against nature's fury. Just as she's trying to count them all, the screech of multiple sets of brakes pierces the howling wind, and every single motorcycle comes to a stop directly outside her front door. The sharp screech of motorcycle brakes cutting through the howling wind sends Edna's heart racing. She clutches her worn cardigan tighter and approaches the frost-covered window, her breath fogging the glass as she peers out into the white chaos. Through the swirling snow, she can make out dark silhouettes. Motorcycles lined up along her small front yard, their riders dismounting and stamping their boots against the cold. "Oh my," she whispers, watching as 15 leather-clad figures gather near her front porch, their voices barely audible over the storm's fury. The doorbell rings, followed by a gentle but urgent knock. Edna hesitates for just a moment, her hand trembling slightly on the doorknob. But something in her heart, perhaps the same instinct that had her preparing those care packages earlier, tells her these strangers need help. She opens the door to find a towering man with a graying beard, his leather jacket dusted with snow. Behind him stand 14 other bikers, all removing their helmets respectfully despite the bitter cold stinging their faces. "Ma'am, I'm Jack Roberts. Folks call me Bear," the leader says, his deep voice surprisingly gentle. "I know this looks strange, but we're caught in this storm with nowhere safe to go. The roads are completely blocked ahead, and my riders are getting dangerously cold." Edna studies their faces, weathered but kind, desperate but polite. One younger rider is already shivering uncontrollably, and she notices several others stamping their feet to maintain circulation. "We were on our way to Children's Hospital in Philadelphia," Jack continues, gesturing to the motorcycles behind them. "Annual charity ride. We've got toys and donations worth over $50,000. But this storm came out of nowhere. Please, Mum," another biker adds, his teeth chattering. "We just need somewhere warm to wait it out. We'll stay in your garage, your porch, anywhere." Without hesitation, Edna steps aside and swings the door wide. "Nonsense. You'll catch your death out there. Comin', all of you." The bikers exchange surprised glances. They'd expected rejection, maybe even fear. But here's this tiny elderly woman ushering them into her home, like long-lost family. As they file through her doorway, leaving muddy boot prints and melting snow on her hardwood floors, Edna notices the careful way they move, respectful, trying not to track too much mess despite the circumstances. One biker even pulls out a handkerchief to wipe his boots before entering. "I'm Rick O'Neill, Roadrunner," says a stocky biker with kind eyes, shaking snow from his jacket. "Ma'am, you sure about this? We're a pretty rough-looking bunch." Edna chuckles, already bustling toward her kitchen. "Honey, I've seen plenty worse than some cold motorcyclists. My late husband Harold always said you judge people by their actions, not their appearance." The living room quickly fills with the displaced riders, their large frames making her cozy space feel smaller but somehow warmer. Jack positions himself near the window, keeping watch as the storm continues its assault outside. "This is incredible," one of the younger bikers murmurs, looking around at Edna's homey decorations. Family photos, handmade quilts, and the faint scent of cinnamon still lingering from her earlier baking. Coffee's brewing, Edna calls from the kitchen, already pulling out every mug she owns. "And I've got some soup on the stove. Nothing fancy, but it'll warm you up." The bikers settle into whatever seating they can find. Her sofa, dining chairs, even the floor. Their earlier tension begins to ease as warmth seeps back into their bones. "So this charity ride," Edna says, returning with steaming mugs. "Tell me about it." Jack's face lights up. "Been doing it for 12 years now. Every Christmas season, riders from across the state join us. We visit children who can't go home for the holidays. Those kids light up when they see us coming," Rick adds, accepting his coffee gratefully. "You should see their faces. But you won't believe what happens next, because just as the conversation deepens, and these unlikely companions begin sharing their stories, the lights suddenly flicker once, twice, and then plunge them all into complete darkness. The darkness swallows them whole as the last flicker of electricity dies, plunging Edna's cozy home into complete blackness. For a moment, nobody moves. The only sounds are the howling wind outside and the collective intake of breath from 15 strangers suddenly thrust into an even more vulnerable situation. "Everyone stay calm." Jack's voice cuts through the darkness, steady and reassuring. "Nobody move until we get some light going." Edna's voice emerges from somewhere near the kitchen. "I've got candles and flashlights. Just give me a second to find them." The sound of careful footsteps and opening drawers follows. Then a match strikes, casting dancing shadows on the walls as Edna lights the first candle. One by one, more flames appear, transforming the living room into a warm, amber-lit sanctuary. The bikers' faces, illuminated by candlelight, look both tougher and more gentle than before. Rick Roadrunner O'Neill rubs his hands together. Well, this just got interesting. The furnace is electric, Edna says, practical as always. We're going to need to stay close together to keep warm. She disappears into a hallway closet and emerges with an armload of quilts and blankets. These were my mother's. Never thought I'd need them all at once. The bikers immediately spring into action, helping to arrange furniture and create a central gathering area. Jack moves the coffee table aside while two others push the couch closer to the fireplace. It's remarkable how quickly these tough-looking men transform into a coordinated team. Following Edna's gentle directions, "I've got a few logs left," she mentions, gesturing toward the nearly empty wood basket beside the fireplace. "But we'll need to make them last." As they settle into their makeshift camp, the reality of their situation begins to sink in. Tommy, a younger biker with worried eyes, speaks up. "Man, my wife's gonna be terrified. We were supposed to check in hours ago." His voice carries the weight of someone who's never been in a situation quite this serious. "Mine too," another biker adds. "We've got commitments tomorrow morning. People counting on us." The mood grows heavier as each man contemplates the implications of their delayed journey. But then Rick clears his throat dramatically. "You know what? This reminds me of the time I got stuck in a McDonald's bathroom for 6 hours. Several bikers chuckled despite their circumstances. "Come on, Roadrunner, that can't be true," one of them says. "Oh, it's true all right," Rick grins, settling back against a pile of cushions. "I was in Topeka, Kansas, middle of July. Stopped to use the facilities and grab a Big Mac. The door handle broke off completely. Just snapped right in my hand. I'm banging on the door, yelling for help. But it's one of those places right off the interstate where the bathroom's around back." The story continues, bringing much-needed laughter to the group as Rick describes his increasingly desperate attempts to escape, including trying to climb out through a window that was painted shut. By the time he reaches the part where a maintenance worker finally freed him, even Edna is wiping tears of laughter from her eyes. 6 hours, she asks, incredulous. 6.5, Rick confirms. "And you know what the worst part was? When I finally got out, the drive-thru kid says to me, 'Sir, your order's ready.' They'd been keeping my food warm the whole time." The laughter dies down gradually, replaced by a comfortable warmth that has nothing to do with the fire. But just as everyone begins to relax, Jack's phone buzzes. "Wait, I've got signal," he exclaims, checking the screen. "My buddy Marcus just texted. He says he's got a generator we can borrow, and he's only about 10 minutes away." Hope spreads through the group like wildfire. "That would solve everything," Edna says, her face brightening. But Jack's expression falls as he reads further. "Damn. He says the roads are completely impassable. Even his truck with chains can't make it through. The plows aren't expected until morning." The brief moment of hope deflates, leaving them back where they started. They settle deeper into their blankets, accepting their fate for the night. The wind continues its relentless assault on the house, rattling windows and finding every small gap to whistle through. Despite the cold seeping in around the edges, there's something almost magical about their gathering. Stories begin to flow more freely, tales of the open road, of the charity work that brought them together, of families waiting at home. Edna shares memories of her late husband Harold, how he always said their home should be a place where anyone could find warmth and kindness. As the evening deepens and the fire burns lower, they've arranged themselves into a tight circle, sharing body heat and blankets. The conversations grow quieter, more intimate. These aren't just tough bikers anymore, and Edna isn't just a lonely widow. They've become something more, a temporary family forged by circumstances and kindness. Just as they're settling in for what promises to be a long, cold night, a loud thud echoes from somewhere outside. Everyone freezes. It's not the sound of wind or snow, it's something else entirely. Something that makes the hair on the back of their necks stand up. The thud echoes through the house like a gunshot, cutting through their conversations and sending everyone into immediate silence. Jack's head snaps toward the window, his protective instincts kicking in as he motions for everyone to stay quiet. "What was that?" whispers Sarah, one of the younger bikers. her voice barely audible over the howling wind. Edna sets down her cup of hot chocolate, her weathered hands surprisingly steady. "Could be a branch," she says, but her eyes reveal concern. Or maybe the old oak finally gave way. Jack moves toward the frost-covered window, carefully peeling back the curtain. Through the swirling snow, he can barely make out shapes in Edna's backyard. "I need to check this out," he announces, already reaching for his heavy jacket. "You're not going out there alone, Bear," says Tommy Tank Rodriguez, standing up despite his still-aching ribs. "That wind'll knock you flat." But as Jack peers harder through the glass, his expression changes from caution to frustration. "Son of a gun," he mutters. "It's the old oak, all right, and it's taken out something important." Edna joins him at the window, squinting into the white chaos. Her face falls as she realizes what's happened. "My emergency shed," she says quietly. "That's where I keep the extra blankets, the camping stove, all the real winter supplies." The room fills with worried murmurs. They'd been managing with what they had, but the temperature is still dropping. And now their best resources are trapped behind a massive fallen tree. "How much stuff are we talking about?" asks Rick Roadrunner O'Neill, trying to lighten the mood despite the gravity of their situation. "Enough to keep us truly warm and fed for days," Edna replies, wrapping her wear-upon shawl tighter around her shoulders. "My late husband Harold always insisted on being prepared. He used to say you never know when you'll need to help others in trouble." The mention of her husband brings a softness to Edna's voice that hasn't been there before. Jack notices the way she touches a faded photograph on the mantelpiece, and something clicks into place for him. "Mrs. Williams," Jack says gently, "tell us about Harold." Edna's eyes brighten despite their dire circumstances. "He was a volunteer firefighter for 37 years, always the first to help when someone was in need. After he passed 5 years ago, I tried to keep that spirit alive, but," she trails off, gesturing around her quiet house. "Well, there hasn't been much opportunity until tonight." "Until tonight," Jack repeats, a plan forming in his mind. "Listen, we're going to get to that shed. All of us, working together." But even as he speaks, another gust of wind rattles the windows so violently that everyone instinctively steps back. This isn't just any storm, it's becoming a genuine blizzard. "We need to try the CB radio first," Edna says suddenly, her eyes lighting up with an idea that surprises everyone. "Harold's old radio is in the basement. If we can reach someone, maybe we can get help clearing that tree." The bikers exchange glances. A CB radio wasn't exactly what they'd expected from their elderly hostess. But nothing about this night has been predictable. "You've got a CB?" asks Maria Phoenix Santos, the group's communications specialist. "Why didn't you mention this before?" Edna blushes slightly. "Harold always said it was for emergencies only. I suppose I never thought of our situation as quite that desperate until now." As they make their way down to Edna's basement, the reality of what they're attempting hits them. The storm is still raging above. Communication might be impossible, and even if they reach someone, help might not be able to get through until morning. But something has changed in the group dynamic. Edna's mention of Harold and his commitment to helping others has struck a chord with these bikers, who were already on a charity mission. They're not just seeking shelter anymore, they're becoming a team. In the basement, Maria examines Harold's old CB setup while Jack and Tommy work on clearing dust from the equipment. The radio looks ancient, but well-maintained, and when Maria flips the switch, a red light glows reassuringly. "CB radio, this is emergency station requesting assistance." Maria speaks into the microphone, her voice professional and calm. "We have multiple people sheltered at," she looks to Edna, 1247 Maple Street, Millersburg, Edna provides. Static fills the basement, punctuated by the storm's rage above them. Everyone holds their breath, hoping for any sign that someone, somewhere, has heard their call. Then, just as the storm seems to reach its absolute peak, the radio crackles to life with a clear, strong voice. "Emergency station. This is convoy leader responding. We've got your location and we're mobilizing now." The first pale rays of dawn pierce through the storm clouds as Edna stirs from her makeshift bed. On the living room floor, around her, the bikers are beginning to wake, their leather jackets serving as pillows, blankets shared between them like a family. The howling wind that had terrorized them through the night has finally quieted to a gentle whisper. Jack stretches and walks to the frost-covered window, his breath forming small clouds in the cold morning air. "Well, I'll be damned," he whispers, his voice filled with wonder. "Edna, you need to see this." She rises slowly, her joints protesting after the long night on the hard floor, and joins him at the window. What she sees takes her breath away completely. The storm has passed, leaving behind a crystalline world transformed by snow. But that's not what makes her gasp. It's what's beyond her front yard that stops her heart. Motorcycles, dozens upon dozens of them, stretching as far as she can see down her small residential street. The chrome and steel glint in the early morning sunlight like a river of metal, flowing past her humble home. Men and women in leather jackets are dismounting, removing helmets, and walking purposefully toward her house. "How many do you think there are?" Edna asks, her voice barely above a whisper. Rick peers over Jack's shoulder and lets out a low whistle. "Has to be over 100, maybe closer to 200. The other bikers crowd around the windows now, all of them staring in amazement at the gathering outside. Jack's CB radio crackles to life one final time, and a familiar voice comes through the static. "Bear, this is Thunder from the Keystone Riders. We brought some friends. Hope you don't mind the company." Jack grins and picks up the handset. "Thunder, how the hell did you find us? Your distress call last night reached every rider within 3 states, brother. Word spreads fast when one of our own needs help. We've got hot coffee, food, medical supplies, and enough manpower to dig you out of whatever mess you're in." Edna's eyes well up with tears as she watches through her window. These strangers, these rough-looking men and women who society might fear or judge, have traveled through dangerous conditions just to help people they've never met, all because 15 of their own had found shelter in her home. "There's more," Jack says softly, still looking outside. "Look at the cars." Mixed in with the motorcycles, Edna sees pickup trucks loaded with snow shovels, neighbors from blocks away carrying thermoses of hot soup, local shop owners with boxes of supplies. Her entire community has mobilized, drawn by the story of the kind widow who sheltered strangers in a storm. Jack opens the front door, and the crisp morning air rushes in along with voices calling out greetings and offers of help. The first person to reach them is a woman about Edna's age, carrying a steaming casserole dish. "You must be Edna," she says warmly. "I'm Margaret from 3 streets over. I heard about what you did, and I just had to come help." We all did. Within minutes, Edna's small home is bustling with activity. Coffee pots appear from nowhere, filling her kitchen with rich aromas. Her dining table groans under the weight of donated food. Children play in her living room while their parents organize supply distributions. Jack finds Edna sitting on her front porch steps, watching the organized chaos with wonder. He settles beside her, both of them still wearing yesterday's clothes, both of them forever changed by their shared night of survival. "You know what the beautiful thing is," Jack says, gesturing toward the crowd of people working together in her yard. "This isn't about the storm anymore. This isn't even about us bikers being stranded. This is about what you started, Edna. This is about kindness creating more kindness." She looks at him with tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. "I was so lonely, Jack. For 3 years since Harold died, I've been so terribly lonely. I thought my days of making a difference were over." "Are you kidding me?" Jack laughs, but his eyes are serious. "Look around you. You've got more family now than you know what to do with." As if to prove his point, Rick approaches them carrying the steaming mugs of coffee. "Edna, there's a reporter here from the local news. Says this story is already spreading on social media. Something about a hashtag called Kindnessmatters." Throughout the morning, the bikers prepare to continue their delayed charity ride. But their departure looks nothing like a simple goodbye. Each one stops to hug Edna, to exchange phone numbers, to promise to visit again. Jack is the last to go, and his farewell is the most difficult. "This isn't goodbye," he tells her firmly. "The Allegheny Riders are adopting you as our honorary grandmother. We'll be checking on you regularly, and I expect you to call if you need anything." "What about your charity ride?" she asks. Jack grins and points to a growing pile of donation envelopes on her porch table. "Are you kidding? We raised more money for veterans this morning than we would have in a month of riding." All because people heard about what you did. As the motorcycles finally begin to depart, their engines creating a symphony of power and purpose, Edna notices something that makes her heart swell with joy. Taped to her front door are dozens of small notes from neighbors she's never met, from bikers heading home to distant states, from children who drew pictures of hearts and rainbows. One note, written in shaky elderly handwriting, simply says, "Thank you for showing us what real kindness looks like. You've changed our whole neighborhood." As the last motorcycle disappears round the corner, Edna doesn't feel the familiar pang of loneliness returning. Instead, she feels something she hasn't experienced in years, the deep satisfaction of knowing her life has purpose, that her capacity for love has created ripples that will spread far beyond her small street in Millersburg. That evening, as she sits in her now quiet living room, her phone rings constantly with calls from new friends, interview requests from reporters, and invitations to community events. But the call that touches her most comes from Jack. "Just wanted to make sure you're okay," he says, "and to tell you something important. You didn't just shelter 15 bikers last night, Edna. You reminded all of us what it means to be human. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest revolutions, and sometimes all it takes is one open door to change the world."